Welcome students. Today we are having topic on water and electrolyte balance. So mainly today we will be discussing regarding water balance and imbalance. So this is picture of patient showing explosive diarrhea. So water is very important for athletes. So this slide shows main electrolytes in body fluid: sodium, potassium, chloride, magnesium, calcium. So these are electrolytes which are in body fluid. So you can see picture in blood vessel along with water. Sodium is also important, and other potassium and other ions also important. So sodium, potassium electrolytes, they are to be maintained always. So this is patient showing dehydration. So dehydration we will discuss later on. First we will discuss regarding water balance. So students, before that we will be starting from functions of water. So there are 4 functions of water. Water provides aqueous medium to organism essential for various biochemical reactions to occur. Second is it is reactant in various metabolic reactions. Third is it is vehicle for transport of solutes. And fourth function of water is it is closely associated with regulation of body temperature. So students, 42 liters of water it is present in our body. Out of that 28 liters it is in intracellular fluid, and remaining 14 liters it is in extracellular fluid. So adult human it contains 60% water in his body. So 14 liters we have seen extracellular fluid is there. So it is divided into interstitial fluid and plasma. So plasma it is about 3.5 liters and interstitial fluid is 10.5 liters. So we'll see water intake and water output. So that is water balance. So a normal balance is maintained by body in its water content. This depends on water intake and water output. So water intake, this may be exogenous or endogenous. So exogenous intake, it is derived from ingestion of food and water. So ingested water, beverages and solid foods. So water taken orally as beverages. Then water content of food taken, water is present in all solid foods to the extent of 50% and is higher in fresh fruits and vegetables. Exogenous water intake depends on personal habits and climate. Then second is endogenous. So metabolic water from oxidation of foodstuffs such as 1 gram of carbohydrate, protein and fat yield 0.6 ml, 0.4 ml and 1.1 ml of water respectively. So endogenous water represents the water derived from oxidative processes in body, that is called metabolic water. Next we will see water output. So water is lost from the body in 4 ways. So through skin, lungs, feces and urine. So in urine 1 to 2 liters of water is lost per day. So we will see in skin there is invisible water loss. So there is invisible water loss through skin by persistent diffusion and occurs in an unregulated manner. It depends on atmospheric temperature and humidity. Water may also be lost through skin through visible perspiration. So total water loss through skin is 450 ml per day. 450 ml per day water is lost via skin. Second is lungs. So through lungs 400 ml per day water loss is there. Lungs excrete water in expired air. This may be greatly increased in fever and hyperventilation. Then third one is loss of water by perspiration and respiration is called insensible water loss. So this is term you should know what is insensible water loss. This question can be asked. So insensible water loss is nothing but loss of water by perspiration and respiration. So it is 850 ml. Then loss of water through feces. So nearly 150 to 250 ml. So average 150 ml per day water is lost in feces. This is also increased in diarrhea. And lastly, through urine. So water is lost through urine. It is variable and about 1 to 2 liters. It varies with diet, atmospheric temperature, and physical activity. So water intake and water output. So exogenous water, fluids, and solid food. So fluids 1 to 2 liters, solid food 1 liter, endogenous metabolic water, that is 300 to 500 ml. So total water intake is 2.5 to 3.5 liters, and water output, that is through skin, invisible water loss, and perspiration, it is variable. Then through lungs 400 ml, feces 150 ml, and urine 1 to 2 liters, and through skin, that is 450 ml. So we have discussed just now. Water intake is regulated by thirst center, which is located in brain and which can stimulate thirst. So water output is mainly regulated by antidiuretic hormone acting on renal tubules. So regulation of water balance. So aldosterone increases sodium reabsorption by renal tubules. Antidiuretic hormone increases water reabsorption by renal tubules. And renin-angiotensin aldosterone axis. When there is decreased blood pressure, renin is stimulated, which stimulates angiotensin I, which converts angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2, and that stimulates aldosterone, which stimulates sodium retention. And atrial natriuretic peptide, that is polypeptide hormone, it increases urinary sodium excretion. So we'll see now regulation of water balance. So water balance is achieved in body through control of intake by hypothalamus and control of excretion by kidneys. So first is control of intake. A thirst center is located in the hypothalamus. This thirst center is stimulated when extracellular fluids become hypertonic or are decreased in volume. This gives the feeling of thirst and leads to increased water intake. Second is control of water excretion by kidneys. This is achieved by antidiuretic hormone ADH, or also called vasopressin, which is secreted from the posterior pituitary. The ADH secretion is stimulated when extracellular fluid becomes hypertonic or is decreased in volume. The ADH stimulates absorption of water from distal and collecting tubules of kidney, thereby decreasing water excretion in urine. When there is excess water in body, ADH is not secreted, and hence there is lesser absorption of water in the renal tubules. This leads to more loss of water in urine, and water balance of the body is maintained. So we'll see now electrolyte balance. So electrolyte, before that we'll see about sodium, potassium, chlorides and phosphates. So electrolytes are substances which dissociate in solutions to form positively or negatively charged ions. The positively charged ions are called cations, and the negatively charged ions are called anions. The body is divided into two compartments, extracellular and intracellular. Each of these contains equal concentration of cations and anions. However, they show variations in concentrations of principal cations and anions. The electrolyte distribution in these compartments is as follows. So sodium 143 milliequivalent per liter, potassium 5, calcium 5, magnesium 2. So total it is 155. Anions in milliequivalent per liter, chlorides 103, by HCO3, carbonates 27, HPO4, that is phosphates 2, 4 minus minus, sulfates 1, organic acid 6, protein 16. So total 155. The sodium is called principal cation. So principal extracellular cation is sodium. That can be your MCQ. And chloride is the principal anion of extracellular fluid. So extracellular cation is sodium and chloride is chief extracellular anion. In intracellular compartment, we'll see how it is distributed. So sodium, we can see potassium is 150, sodium is 10, magnesium is 40, calcium is 2. These are called intracellular fluid cations. And intracellular fluid anions are phosphates 140, bicarbonate HCO3 minus 10, chloride 2, sulfates 5, proteins 40, organic acids 5. So intracellular fluid anions 202, intracellular fluid cations 202. So these figures may vary. According to few books, it is 195, equal to 195. So here it is shown as 202 intracellular fluid cations, 202 is equal to intracellular fluid anions, 202 milliequivalents per liter. So here also you can see chief intracellular cation is, so your answer should be potassium. It is 150 milliequivalents per liter. And chief intracellular anion is HPO4 minus minus. So it is 140 milliequivalents per liter. So that is your answer. So thus potassium is called principal cation and phosphate is the principal anion of intracellular fluid. The intracellular fluid is having higher concentration of electrolytes as compared to that of extracellular fluid. Thus intracellular fluid is hypertonic as compared to extracellular fluid. So we are going to discuss regarding dehydration. Before that we will discuss hormonal control of fluid and electrolyte balance. Again, this can be asked as a short note. So students, we have just now discussed about role of ADH in water balance. We will discuss again hormonal control of fluid and electrolyte balance. So you have been just shown the slide of electrolytes, that is sodium, potassium, phosphates, sulfates, calcium, chloride, all concentrations I have shown you. So how these are regulated? The hormonal control of fluid and electrolyte balance is done by ADH and mineralocorticoids. So ADH, that is called antidiuretic hormone, is called vasopressin. It is secreted by posterior pituitary. It is a nanopeptide. Its release is triggered by neural impulses which are activated by several stimuli like hemoconcentration or increased osmolality of plasma. So whenever there is hemoconcentration and increased osmolality of plasma, ADH will be secreted. So what is action of ADH? ADH activates adenylate cyclase of the cells of distal convoluted tubules of kidneys. This generates 3'5' cyclic AMP, which causes alteration in the permeability of cells to water. This enhances absorption of water from distal convoluted tubules. Next is mineralocorticoids, how they help in hormonal control of fluid and electrical balance. So these act mainly in kidneys, stimulating reabsorption of sodium by distal convoluted tubules and collecting tubules. These cause retention of sodium and chlorides in blood and also promote secretion of potassium, hydrogen and NH4+, that is ammonium, by kidney. The main mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. The others are corticosterone and 11-dehydrocorticosterone. However, aldosterone is 50 times more potent than 11-dehydroxy, 11-dehydrocorticosterone and 1000 times more potent than corticosterone. Thus, whenever there is water and salt depletion in body, ADH, aldosterone and cortisol are secreted. The net result is that they enhance water and sodium absorption from distal convoluted tubule and promote potassium secretion, potassium excretion. This causes the transfer of water and sodium to extracellular fluid from intracellular fluid, and the equality of osmolarity of both ECF and ICF is maintained. On the other hand, when there is salt and water excess in the body, there is release of ADH, and mineralocorticoid suppressed. Release of ADH and mineralocorticoid is suppressed when there is salt and water excess in body. So thereby the enhancing sodium and water excretion and promoting potassium absorption by distal convoluted tubules. This causes transfer of water and sodium from ECF to ICF and potassium from ICF to ECF, thereby maintaining osmolarity of ECF and ICF. So now students will be discussing most important part, that is dehydration. This is a short note for you, dehydration. So what is dehydration? So dehydration is a condition in which water content of body is reduced and the body is in negative water balance and water intake is less than water output. Okay, so pure water depletion is uncommon, but it is accompanied by concomitant loss of electrolytes. So causes of dehydration may be due to decreased intake of water or increased output. So due to loss of water alone or due to deprivation of water and electrolyte. Okay, so decreased water intake, it can be due to water deprivation during travel through deserts. Secondly, it can be in unconscious patients, and thirdly, the patients who are unable to drink due to dysphagia. Second cause is increased water output. So second cause of dehydration is increased water output. So in brief, I have shown in slide diarrhea, vomiting, excessive sweating. So severe diarrhea and vomiting, severe burns or hemorrhage, excessive sweating due to high environmental temperature or humidity, increased loss through lungs occurs in fever and hyperventilation. Then diabetes insipidus, renal diseases, excessive infusion of hypertonic saline, all these can cause increased water output. So 4 out of 5 people suffer from diarrhea. So that is the picture. So this is the patient showing clinical symptoms of diarrhea, dehydration. So we'll see clinical features of dehydration. So there occurs thirst, weakness, oliguria. So volume of extracellular fluid is decreased with increase in electrolyte concentration and osmotic pressure. The cells are shrunken, increased water retention in body, and urine volume becomes low, is very low. So there occurs thirst, weakness, oliguria, loss of weight, dryness of mouth, wrinkling and loosening of skin, sunken eyeballs, increased pulse rate, low cardiac output, fall in blood pressure, lethargy, confusion, coma, exhaustion and collapse. Blood changes are increase in NPN compounds, that is rise in plasma proteins, chlorides in blood. Then there is increased levels of blood urea, serum creatinine. So blood urea levels are increased, loss of electrolytes, sodium and potassium. So urine changes, urine volume is decreased and its specific gravity is increased. In severe dehydration, there is increased pulse rate, low BP, sunken eyeballs, decreased skin turgor, lethargy, confusion and coma, and can lead to death also if not treated. So treatment, before treatment, I would like to discuss one more important thing, that is difference between primary and secondary dehydration. This can be asked as short note to you. So dehydration is condition in which water content of the body is reduced and the body is in negative water balance, as you know. So difference, it is as follows. So what is primary dehydration, what is secondary? So primary dehydration, it is mainly due to depletion of water from the body, and secondary dehydration, it is mainly due to alteration in levels of electrolytes, that is mainly sodium. Second differentiating point, in primary dehydration causes are inability to drink water, comatose persons, water deprivation in deserts, excessive water loss in diarrhea, vomiting, sweating, diabetes insipidus. Secondary dehydration causes are infusion of fluids with low sodium content, Addison's disease. Then third important difference is extracellular fluid becomes hypertonic in primary dehydration, but in secondary dehydration extracellular fluid becomes hypotonic. Fourth differentiation point is it causes intracellular dehydration as water is drawn from cells into extracellular fluid in primary dehydration. Intracellular dehydration is there in primary dehydration. In secondary dehydration, it causes swelling of cells, intracellular edema, as water shifts from extracellular fluid into the cells. Next point is osmolality of ECF is increased in primary dehydration, and in secondary dehydration, osmolality of ECF is decreased. And last not least, ADH secretion is stimulated in primary dehydration. In secondary dehydration, ADH secretion will be inhibited. So students, we have discussed again primary and secondary dehydration differences. Now we'll focus on treatment part in brief, that is not expected in detail for you. So plenty of water should be taken for dehydration patients. So oral intake of fluids to be started or increased, that is first point. Second is oral intake is not, if it is not possible, then intravenous administration of isotonic saline is given as 5% dextrose solution. And third, loss of electrolytes is corrected by infusing 0.9% saline solution. So that is in brief I am telling you treatment of dehydration, and it will be dealt in medicine part. So plenty of water should be taken. So students, in this topic we have discussed regarding water distribution in body. Secondly, we have discussed water balance and imbalance. Thirdly, we discussed electrolyte composition of body. And fourthly, we have discussed electrolyte balance and imbalance in detail. So you can have short notes on dehydration, water. You can have LAQ discuss water and electrolyte balance in detail and add a note on dehydration. So you have to write water balance, you have to write electrolyte composition of body, then you have to write regulation of water balance, you have to write hormonal control of fluid and electrolyte balance and difference between, then you have to add short note, that is dehydration. In shortly you have to write about dehydration, differentiate primary and secondary dehydration, and then write down clinical features of dehydration in detail. So that's all about water and electrolyte balance in brief. Thank you all.